of theater roles as Fanny Bryce in this. So I guess it's just something, everything is going the right way for you.
Knock on all of the wood everywhere. I'm profoundly grateful and insanely lucky. And as someone who grew up just deeply in love with musical theater, and my one goal my entire life was to be on Broadway. That was all I ever hoped for, all I ever dreamed for. And so when I did Hello Dolly, I just, it felt like my dreams were literally coming true, and to be amongst the Divine Miss M and David Hyde Pierce and Kate Baldwin and Gavin Creel and Taylor Trench, these just remarkable, incredible titans of musical theater. And then now to go back to the theater and to be playing a role that I've literally dreamt of playing since I could make words and communicate to my mom. I would
Make words, yeah. Funny girl.
really like, and I had nodules on my vocal cords as a kid, so I'd be like, funny girl. Like, that's what I sounded like when I was a little baby. My mom played it for me when I was 2 years old. She loves musicals. She is a Jew from Brooklyn, so she loves Barbra Streisand. And she played it for me, and I became like, all day. Once you see it, it's an obsession. And so I grew up just idolizing both Fanny Bryce and Barbra Streisand. And so for this to be happening, it's just completely the most surreal thing to ever
I
happen.
saw a photograph of you. What was it? Your four-year-old birthday party where you're basically dressed. 3? Great.
Weird kid, I'm telling you. I was a unique kid. My wants and my hobbies were very singularly focused on Barbra Streisand. Yeah, I asked for my 3rd birthday if I could go as Fanny Bryce to my 3rd birthday party.
I hope you sent it to Barbra Streisand.
You know, when I was 3, someone got that photo to Barbara and she signed it. So she's seen it, you know, in another context many years ago. But it's just sort of the biggest, most, I thought Monica would be, and in many ways, Monica is the most challenging, deeply, I feel like a profound sense of responsibility playing Monica Lewinsky, but there's a totally different sense of responsibility when you're playing Fanny Bryce. So.
Yeah, during the period you're playing Monica, I don't think it was a time where anybody was bursting into song.
Monica does love musicals, so that's something that we share. We have slightly different musical theater tastes. She's more of a Les Mis, Rent kind of girl, and I'm more of a Sondheim kind of girl, but we both are musical theater fans, and she loves musicals, so.
What I think is really significant, in addition to what a great performance you're giving in it, is that we're watching a woman who didn't have a voice, that the government said, okay, here's the deal. We're going to threaten you. We'll put you in jail. We'll make your life miserable, but you have to shut up. The worst thing. And you can't watch this whole impeachment series without feeling that if only Monica had lived and experienced that today in the Me Too movement and what happened, that they wouldn't have gotten away with this crap.
I completely agree with everything you said. I think Monica was actively and literally silenced by the Office of Independent Counsel. When they created her immunity deal, part of it was that she was not permitted to speak publicly about what was happening. So she was never permitted to, exactly as you said, have her own voice. You know, I really see her in the 90s, she was sort of a meal for society and the media to feast upon and just sort of rip to shreds. And it was all about what she was wearing, her size, the way she sounded, her upbringing, but none of it was told from her voice, from her vantage point, from her point of view. And so Impeachment, American Crime Story, the show is really trying to peel back the curtain, not just on Monica, but also on Linda Tripp and Paula Jones and all of the women at the center of this story, and give their humanity back to society and to the media, and to reframe the story in a very different light.
It's interesting to me because I kept thinking, watching you play what Monica was going through when you did this movie I love that is already back so far in your career. It's like 2 years old, you know, How to Build a Girl, where you're just this evil queen of rock journalists who learned basically to become successful by showing no empathy, by saying, here's how I'm going to make it on the backs of everybody else. And yet you seem the most empathetic of people.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. I think that I am very much that way myself as Beanie. Like, I am a very much an empath, and I'm a sponge of other people's feelings. I want everyone to feel good as much as they can in this world. That is something that I really hope to put out. And, you know, I think coming to this moment of playing Monica Lewinsky, society painted her through a very specific lens that was anti-Semitic and fatphobic and misogynistic and all of these things. And so many people still see her that way. And so, you know, I actually had a woman come up to me before we started filming. So it was before COVID. But when the show had already been announced, and she was like, I don't mean to bother you, but I read that you're playing Monica Lewinsky. And I just want to tell you, I am so ashamed of the thoughts that I thought about Monica, even inside my own head, not out loud to anyone else. I can't believe the narrative that I let this narrative that was being fed in the media affect my own thoughts and opinions of her. And I really hate myself for what I thought of her in the 90s when this was all happening. And I'm embarrassed. And I wish I could tell her that, but I'm telling you because you're her, And it was so meaningful to me. And I think, she had sort of already done the work that I think a lot of people have not done. And we hope that the show will help them on that journey of really analyzing what ideology was fed to them at the time. Because there's so many people that they have no idea what she went through. They see her as the Star Report. They see her as, an SNL character or the Tubby Temptress, which is what they called her in the papers back then. And they don't see her as a 24-year-old woman who's basically a ping pong ball between Bill Clinton and Linda Tripp, just being passed back and forth by these people double her age that have a lot more power than her.
When this happened, you were probably still in the crib somewhere, so you didn't know that any of this was happening. But you had Monica there as a producer, as a consultant, as somebody that you could talk to about what it was. And that had to be a tremendous experience to have that.
For the first 7 months of our shoot, Monica and I could never be in person together because of COVID. But we were always in contact over Zoom and FaceTime and this app called Marco Polo where you can send videos back and forth to one another.
Oh, right, yeah.
And text. So there would be times where she would send me Marco Polo and then I would go to respond, but I'd be dressed as her in the wig. And I was like, maybe I should wait till I'm out of the wig. Figure out too much. But, in all seriousness, I knew I was almost a blank slate for what happened during this time. I knew just the bare minimum. And I think that's a really beautiful perspective to approach it from. Because again, I didn't have to undo all of these preconceived notions. I was almost a blank slate.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, she's the subject of our show in addition to being the producer. And I didn't want to make her relive any of this, which was pure trauma for her. So I didn't want to make her rehash all of these deeply traumatic moments if I didn't have to. So I did all the research I could before I even met her to make sure that I was armed and prepared with everything I wanted to know. And then it was really just getting to know her as a person and for her to know me so that she could develop this trust with me, because I really wanted her to know that her story was safe with me and that her personhood was safe with me. And that really mattered to me. So I remember right before we started filming, I was having all of these feelings towards her and I couldn't put them into words. And then finally I was like, I'm your bodyguard. And that was sort of the closest way I could describe it. And I was like, I'm going to put my body in front of yours. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to take on all of this hurt and this suffering and this, all of it that she had to go through at the time. And I will protect everything you were feeling. I will protect who you are. And that means including your faults and your mistakes, because if you don't include that stuff, it's not a human portrait. It's just a one-sided.
It wouldn't be, because we see her almost crushing naivete, she has we're feeling sorry, but at the same time we're saying, get out of there. It's just,
I'm looking at the screen myself, like, don't do it, but to Monica's credit, she was really, she really wanted all of that stuff to be in there. Moments that are very vulnerable for her, moments that are embarrassing for her. She wanted that to be in there because she, as a producer, wanted the most human portrait of the story, which if you only show people as good, it's one note. The note is a good note, but it is still.
And they won't believe it.
Exactly, and then people won't believe it. The credibility of the storytelling and to create the most honest portrait of herself, she included all of these moments that I'm sure now in her 40s, she wishes, she wishes she could go back and change, but she can't. And so she was like, it's your job to portray them as honestly and as openly as you can.
What did you learn about Monica from doing this? Not before you did it, not your preparation, but after actually doing it. Something you didn't expect to learn. Yeah.
I think the thing that I feel most of all is how profoundly misunderstood she was and how brave she is. I think she's an incredibly brave woman. Both Linda Tripp and Paula Jones got plastic surgery after this happened. Linda got married and I think used her married name most of the time. Monica, everywhere she goes is Monica Lewinsky. And she looks she is stunning. She's aged so beautifully. Sarah Paulson and I are always like staring at her like, your skin is amazing. But everywhere she goes is Monica Lewinsky. And then and now, I think she's one of the most deeply brave women I've ever known or studied or portrayed, because the courage that she exemplified during that time and all through the world learning her name, getting questioned 23 times by the Office of Independent Counsel about what happened between her and Bill Clinton, specifically an entire deposition focused on their sexual interactions, the world knowing her name, all through her TED Talk and through producing the show. She's just a remarkably brave, courageous woman. And I think that is the narrative. It's not a narrative that is ever fed about her.
This to me, what you're doing is a great performance. I'm not the only one who thinks that. I think if we held the Emmys today, you'd be holding one because that's it. And it's a tribute to you, but it's a tribute to Monica and what she went through in life too. You're both two Jewish girls from LA.
I always say we're cut from the same cloth. We're two Jewish girls from LA that listen to show tunes on the treadmill. Like that's a specific type.
What could be better, actually? That's to me sounds like paradise. Yeah. Why not do that? But these are all major steps happening in your life now. We talked a little bit before we went on camera about my Seeing the Humans, which is the next thing we'll see with you, which is adapted from Stephen Karam's play by him, by the playwright, by the guy that wrote it. And it's about an Irish Catholic family, really, and living and having Thanksgiving dinner and finding the world outside, the noises, the clanging, everything else happening. It has humor, but it also is a little scary about the world that we live in now.
It really, I was lucky enough to see the play on Broadway, and it left such a profound impact on me. But it is a family drama about a family on Thanksgiving, which I think we all can relate to. But it's also very existential, and it's sort of a thriller on an existential level, I would say, if you would agree. I think it's a family drama with a real thriller undertone, and I think the cinematic version of the experience, is amplified even more because what they can do with brilliant sound design and cinematography.
Oh, yeah.
You feel very anxious the whole time that you're watching it, and you don't quite know.
I'm still feeling it. I'm like, what? No, but your character, Bridget, she does something that I noticed particularly in the movie and how you play her, because your boyfriend, again, has got this little video thing going where he's putting in a kind of video fireplace to just warm up this place in Chinatown that isn't good, and you're not having any of it. It's like, no, I'm going to live in the real world, while a lot of the other characters are retreating from that because it's too painful to live in that world.
She's a tough cookie.
She's a tough cookie. She is
stubborn, and she thinks she's all knowing, and she's incredibly grounded and sort of rooted. Like she is unwilling to bend some of the time.
Yeah.
And it was such an incredible journey for me because so many of the other characters I played in the past have led with sort of a sweetness or a gentleness. But with Bridget, it was sort of every part of me is Beanie that is just, ask any of my friends. They always say I'm like the opposite of a Sour Patch Kid. Like I'm first I'm sweet, then I'm sour. Like I lead with this sort of sweetness, but when I want what I want, I need to get it. And so it was kind of delicious to lean into that side of me with Bridget. And it was remarkable for me as an actor to get to stand toe to toe with both Richard Jenkins and Jane Howdy-Shell, because with Bridget and her parents, they're tough on one another both ways. I think her father is incredibly tough on her. He doesn't agree with her lifestyle choices. He doesn't like this new apartment that they've just moved into, which is the setting for the film. He doesn't like that she's living downtown in New York post 9/11, and there's so much going on. And then with Jane Howdy-Shell's character, there's I think specifically because of Jane and I, there's a lot of body discussion. There's a lot of discussion of the two of them talking about their weight and food, and it's a really contentious sort of feeling between the two of them. And there's a lot of that, and it gets very emotional and very deep.
Well, it would have to. I mean, is that something that you think about in your own life? I mean, or can you put that completely out of your head? Because the great thing about the characters you played to me is that they're not based on your weight, your height, where you came from. There's a humanity in all of them, which is what's exciting about watching you go through this career and do it.
Oh, with my characters, yeah, thank you. I think I'm someone that is really always been very comfortable with my body and never actively, even as a child, never permitted other people to kind of pigeonhole me because of the way that I looked or the way that I sounded or something like that. I remember growing up, I was a little chubby girl who did musicals, and so people would often ask me, "Have you ever played Tracy Turnblad?" And,
oh, right, sure, the only role. There it is.
And it's a very frustrating question for me because as much as
Ray, that's it. You can only play that.
Right, don't get me wrong, I love this, but I was like, why is that the only role that I've ever played? So to answer your question, like in my working life, I have tried to be very specific about the roles that I take and not take roles that are defined by their exterior, but are more roles that are interior, very rich interior life, and the exterior is just whatever it happens to be.
You're doing that. I mean, everything is Funny Girl happens on Broadway. Barbara Streisand will be there opening night. It will all be great. I'd like to go out. I do this with every interview I do here on the show. We do a little of song, and I don't know what it is. I'm sure Funny Girl's off limits now because it's coming up, and I can't even get you to do Who Are You Now, which is my favorite song nobody knows from Funny Girl. But you can do any little thing that you have in your head just to end us in song.
Ooh, what do I do?
Oh, I could make so many demands. But I won't. I won't.
Oh God, this is so hard to choose. It's like all the songs are running through my
All I
head.
can think of when I'm looking at you now is, oh, well, bred, agree, Minnie Faye has pedigree.
Not elegance if you ain't got elegance. You can never ever carry it off.
Well, Beanie, you're carrying it off. And I never even got to ask you where you got the name Beanie from. But
Next time, I'll take
time, we'll do it next time. Thank you so much. You're a total delight.
Thank you so much. You too. It was such a pleasure to meet over Zoom.
More Americans choose ABC News, America's #1 news source.
The ladies you love, the hottest topics happening now. There's only one place to find it all.
You guys are having the hard conversations. I love The View.
The most watched #1 daytime talk show is The View. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It was a scary time.
In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. You had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there. This was premeditated evil.
We have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
When you wake up in the morning, when you wake up in the morning, darling, I'll be by your side. I'll be there by your side. I'll be everything you wanted. I'll be there by your side. If you need a light to shine in, hold up your hand, let the stars shoot again, let the light shine in through the door.
Good morning, America.
ABC News honored winner of 9 Edward R. Murrow Awards, more than any other network, including winning for the 3rd straight year the award for overall excellence in television. ABC News is America's #1 news source. With so much at stake, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 newscast and the #1 program on television.
We have some stuff. Come on.
It's been 2 months since Roya Shorts moved into her new apartment, and she says every day with a permanent roof over her head is a blessing.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm so thankful, and God bless all of you. Tonight I'm gonna sleep very good. Thanks to you guys.
Bed to sleep in, a kitchen table to eat on, a sofa to lay on. Just a short time ago, these were all basic living essentials that were out of reach for Roya. Last year, she found herself struggling to make ends meet amid the pandemic and a sudden loss of household income. She and her adult son were forced to move out of their Southern California home. To survive, they started living in her car, and she didn't know where to turn.
I thought, what are we gonna do? I was sitting and sleeping for a whole year. Homeless people living, and it's very hard. You have to look for a bathroom, you have to look for the shower, you have to look for food. It's hard. It's not easy.
Roya eventually spoke with a social worker who told her about a new program offering homeless city dwellers a small, clean, air-conditioned space to stay temporarily. She says she didn't know what to expect when she pulled up with her son, but once she stepped out of the car, there was an unmistakable sense of community.
They take care of you like their own family. It's safe. We have a roof on our head. We can lock the door. We have bathroom, shower.
Roya is one of hundreds of formerly homeless Angelenos who have flocked to the city's tiny village housing projects. The program launched this spring with just a single collection of 40 colorful homes in North Hollywood. Since then, the program has expanded to neighborhoods throughout the city.
All the costs that we pay to keep people barely alive on the street is much more than just housing them and ending that condition. This is un-American to have people on the streets. Our veterans, our kids, this is not who we are. And Los Angeles is showing what happens when we step up.
Each one of these homes is 64 square feet, and right now this is the largest tiny home community in the country. It's one of 6 here across